You're watching Adorama TV.
Hi everybody, welcome to Adorama TV Product Reviews. I'm Mark Wallace, and today we're going to talk about 3 lenses all made by Tamron, and these lenses give you exceptional quality without breaking the bank. So let's look at these 3 lenses. Now this one is a 70 to 300 millimeter 4.4 to 5.6 lens, and this is terrific for shooting sports or wildlife, that kind of stuff, and it's an awesome lens. And then we have over here another lens. This is an 18 all the way up to 270 millimeter lens. And this guy is an f3.5 to 6.3 lens. And then finally, we have a macro lens. This is a 60 millimeter, and this is an f2, so it really lets in a lot of light. So let's walk through each of these lenses and talk about why they're great and what you can use them for. Now the first lens here I want to talk about, this is a 70 to 300 millimeter lens. Again, it's an f4 to 5.6 lens, and this is a $449 lens, which is phenomenal. A great price point for a lens with all these features. Now the nice thing about this, I really like this, it's got VC, which is vibration compensation. And so in other lenses you might see this as IS for image stabilization or VR for vibration reduction. But Tamron calls it VC for vibration compensation. And what that allows you to do is if you want to handhold and there's a little bit of movement of the camera, well, that is going to compensate for that so your images aren't blurry, which is really terrific. Now, one thing for you sports shooters out there, if you're shooting any kind of panning, well, this vibration compensation only has an on and off button. It doesn't have any modes, and so on some higher end lenses, you can leave the vibration compensation on, and then as you're panning, you can have it on a mode that eliminates the compensation for left and right, but compensates for up and down. Well, you have to turn this all the way off if you're going to do any panning. Not a big deal, but just something to note. You either have it on or off. Now, I shot this lens using model because I'm a portrait photographer, and I found that I got really good color detail, and the images were very nice and sharp. One thing I did notice when I compared this to my Canon 70 to 200L lens, which is a lens that's more than triple the price of this lens, the autofocus was a little bit sluggish, but to get that autofocus to be as fast, you're going to have to really spend a lot of money. So this isn't a slow autofocus, it just doesn't keep up with those high-end lenses. So at this price point, again, $449, this is an excellent lens for portraits and for shooting any kind of wildlife or sports. Well, let me show you another lens, and this guy here is sort of a do-everything lens. This is the 18 to 270 millimeter 3.5 to 6.3 lens. Now this is made for smaller sensors, so it's not going to work on a full-frame camera like a 5D Mark II or 1DS series camera. This is made for these smaller camera sensors that are like in the Rebel and the 7D, etc. Now this lens is $649, so it's a little bit more expensive. But the nice thing about this is you can do almost anything with it. So you can shoot scenic photography at 18 millimeters, you can shoot wildlife all the way up to 270 millimeters, you can shoot portraits and sports and all kinds of stuff with this. And so if you only have one lens and you want to do a bunch of different things, well, this is a lens that is a great choice. Now the other thing this has on it, it's got also the vibration compensation, so it's going to do the same thing that I showed you before on this 70 to 300. So it will help you to make sure that you don't have any jitters and blurry images based on camera shake. But again, it only has on and off, so there's no panning mode on this lens. Now one thing I did note, there are a couple things that were cons. One is that when you zoom this all the way into 270, the aperture is 6.3. Most lenses, the aperture would be a 5.6, so it's about a third stop less light than most comparable lenses, so I didn't like that. The other thing that I noticed is when you point the camera down, see how that sort of falls there? So this lens is falling down. Now I don't like that because that means if you're shooting anything down, you have to actually hold the lens. There's no way to lock that in there. Now there is a lock on the lens. You can see that right here, if I can click that and lock this lens. So what that does is when it's at the 18 millimeter point, I can lock that. So if I have it in a camera bag, it's not going to zoom out. So it does have that. All right, now this again, it's great for scenics as well as portraits as well as wildlife. It can do just about anything. Now let's look at the last lens here. And this guy right here, this is a 60 millimeter f2 1:1 macro, and it's got autofocus that is pretty darn good. And again, this one is also made for smaller sensors, so it's not going to work on a full frame camera. This guy is $485 Now the nice thing is this is an f2 lens, which means it lets in a lot of light. And in my testing, we could shoot up to about 9 inches. So I think the specs is 9.1 is the closest you can get. But I got some really, really nice macro shots. Now the one thing that I did notice was this guy gets so close that in a lot of situations, if you're going to do some serious macro work, you're going to need a macro flash in some of those situations because the light just can't get around this lens because you're so darn close, unless you take off the lens hood, because there's just no way for the light to get in there. So if you're going to do some serious macro work, this is a lens that is great for you, but you do need to get a macro flash to make sure that you can get some light in there. Now one last thing that I saw with the zoom lenses that I thought was a con, and that is these guys have everything external. So when you zoom in and out, what's happening is these are coming out of the lens, and what that means is dust and grime can get into those points, and so eventually these lenses are going to need to be cleaned if you're shooting at beaches or any kind of dusty environment. Both of these guys, it's not internal, it's external, and so there's some gaps in there that you're going to get some dust. But again, at this price point, these lenses are pretty darn spectacular. Well, there you have it. 3 lenses to choose from, a 70 to 300 for sports or for wildlife shooting that will work on a full frame sensor. And then 2 for smaller sensors, the 18 to 270, which can do just about anything, and a great macro lens, a 60mm f2, all from Tamron. Well, thanks so much for joining me today. Remember, if you have gear that you'd like to know about, you can send your questions to me at askmark@adorama.com, and I might just use it on an upcoming episode. And also, don't miss all of our other reviews. They're all at the Adorama Learning Center. You can look those up and see all kinds of articles with links to photos and as well as other articles teaching you how to use this gear. Thanks again for joining me, and I'll see you again next week.
This episode is brought to you by Adorama TV. Visit the Adorama Learning Center where you'll find photography tips and techniques, links to the gear used in this episode, and related videos. For all the latest photography, video, and computer gear, visit Adorama.com. And the next time you're in New York City, visit our store located on 18th Street between 5th and 6th Avenue.